and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with FSL. I'm Tashbunny, your host for today, and for you guys at home who do not know what FSL is, we've gone over this so many times. FSL is the premier gaming circuit for women around Southeast Asia as well as Asia. So if you guys want to know the latest happenings in VCT Game Changers APAC, this is the show you want to go on. Anyways, guys, today's episode is going to be a good one because today we have a very special guest. She is someone known from the VCT Game Changers APAC series. One of casters, we have Zahk.
Hello. It's really great to be here, and it's kind of like a dream come true because I used to watch this show like around last year, I think, when it started, and it's always nice to stay updated with everything that happens in the Game Changer scene at APAC, and to be a part of here with somebody as renowned as Tashville. It's pretty awesome.
So for today's episode, it is very different than our usual team analysis gameplay breakdown because today we are going to be breaking down the teams that have made it to Elite. And if you guys don't know, VCT Game Changers APAC Elite will be happening in October. 8 teams have been selected. The last tournament was the VCT LCQ. So let's start off with Alter Ego Celeste.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody who's been a part of the APAC scene for any amount of time really needs an introduction to this team, unless, of course, they only came in the last 4 months. But yeah, Alter Ego Celeste, I don't think they've lost a single tournament in the Game Changer circuit till date, and they're number 1 for a reason, and that is that they're just undefeated so far. And, I think so far they've only lost one particular matchup, which was against X10 Sapphire, if I'm not wrong. They did go to the lower bracket, but apart from that, they came back, they got their revenge, they won Open 4, and they were the first team to, I believe, qualify for Elite based off of circuit points.
I think when you talk about Alter Ego Celeste, like everyone already knows how good they are, how caliber they are in terms of game style and gameplay, and how dominating they can be. They have a very interesting duo when it comes to team. Ayumi as well as Neri is something that you really want to look out for, just how their double duelist comp can be very scary. But you also have sometimes this wildcard Aluka that can go between a very aggressive player that can play something from a very interesting initiator to even a duelist if she wants to. It really shows how dynamic the team can be and how comfortable they are in so many different roles.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. So Alter Ego, they've had a bit of a roster change. I think that about a few weeks ago, they announced that their controller player, Oriophilia, they were letting go of her. And like you mentioned, it is going to be Aluka to come in and replace her. Aluka used to be a player for Nigma Galaxy, now known as Looking for Org, if I'm not wrong, LFO. So she's going to be stepping into her shoes. And this is going to lead to a very interesting change in the team dynamic because before this, like you mentioned, it was Neri and Ayumi who were really on that chamber/duelist role here. Ayumi in particular on that chamber, but now it's going to bring up the question because who is going to play controller right now? Ayumi has filled a role on a few maps before with that Omen, I think Haven if I'm not wrong, but with Aluka coming in and she's not exactly a controller player, it's going to lead to a lot of questions as to who's going to be playing which role for Alter Ego and whether that's going to affect their actual performance heading into Elite.
Yeah, it is a question for me as well because I was talking a little bit with the team of LFO prior, and for Aluka, she's very comfortable on those duelist roles. Now that you mentioned that, will Ayumi be taking a back seat? We'll be seeing Neri perhaps playing a different role as well because we have seen those role swaps before, but it's never really drastic. They would probably change to the team but still maintain that role. And we all know when you change a role and want to work well chemistry-wise with your team, it can take some time. So now the question is, are they as undefeated as you mentioned before? So I think, in your opinion, what do you expect from them in terms of their performance during Elite later?
I mean, if you talk about historically how their performance has been, they are going to end up winning the whole thing. But I think the stakes for this Elite event are significantly higher because, any other Game Changers event, it was either for circuit points or a possible qualification for a future APAC event. And your record speaks for yourself. For example, Alter Ego, they qualified off of circuit points. So they won Open 1 to 4 to be able to make it to Elite with that first place slot here. But in Elite, there are no second chances, right? You win the event and you get to go to Berlin, which is where the International Game Changers Championship is going to be happening this year. But if you lose, you're not going to get anything. Your year's end is going to run right there. So there's a lot at stake. And with this last minute roster shuffle heading in, I think before this, I would have said that it's mostly going to be Alter Ego walking away. But it opens up more space for other teams to possibly take advantage. And Alter Ego, they've had time to figure out their dynamic, but not as much as you'd like, especially considering that they haven't played competitively in the last 3 or 4 months. So it's going to lead to a lot of questions, but it's also a benefit because there are no VODs of them playing with the new roster, with the new team available. They're also coming in as sort of a dark horse, which is weird because they're the team that's played the most matches over the course of the last 2 years, but now they're going to be coming in as a dark horse as well as an experienced contender. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. Speaking of excited, let's talk about another team now, Bren Victress. And we all know between Bren Victress, SMG, Alter Ego, there's been, and also Extend Crit prior in Open 1, it's been sort of like a race between these 4 teams who will be coming up on top. And Bren Victress managed to get that second place. So now, in your opinion, what do you think of their performance so far, and what are you expecting?
I think for Bren Victress, they're a team that's been extremely consistent. Like you mentioned, they are very close to SMG. They've had a lot of ups and downs with it, but they're also one of the teams that has gotten close to beating Alter Ego Celeste in the Game Changer scene, as well as I think they've actually defeated them in tournaments outside. Like, I think it was the ROG Showdown. I'm not sure which exact tournament it was, but a third-party tournament that was for women. They did manage to beat out Alter Ego in a 5-map grand final. So they've shown that they can beat Alter Ego before, so that they're definitely a team to watch out for. And I think Bren also has that flexibility of a 6-woman roster. So, some maps they like to play Mikasi, some maps they bring in Twirly, especially on Fracture. She's a very aggressive, very scary Neon to really deal with. So I think that they have that kind of flexibility coming in, and they have a very consistent record as well. A lot of second place, third place finishes over the course of the past few opens, and they're another team that directly qualified based off of circuit points. So definitely a team to watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at them as well, they're a team that really has good chemistry in a way that you kind of think of Alter Ego as well. How they work together, how they take a side, how they hold the post plant has been extremely good. Especially if you think about Alexi. I think for her personally, she has had one of the best runs so far going into the game. As an IGL, you don't really see IGLs going super aggressive. They're usually kind of like behind the scenes, sort of just giving an idea for the team, how you want to move your chess pieces. But for Alexi, she's not afraid to play as aggressive with her teammates, and it really shows me that she's like a master of that multi-role situation where she can tell people what to do, at the same time maintain her own positioning and her own plays.
Oh yeah, that's definitely for sure. When you talk about IGOs who are not afraid to be aggressive, I think that that's something that can be applied to a lot of game changer teams in APAC here. For example, I think I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think Orangutan, their IGO Sway, she's their primary duelist, and she does a fantastic job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think for SMG as well, I believe that Abigail or Kohai, yeah, she's better known. She's also their star duelist player, but she's also in that co-IGL role. So a lot of these teams from Game Changers APAC, they're phenomenal at being able to balance it out. And I think one more thing that really works in Bren's favor is that a lot of these players, at least 4 of them, they have prior FPS experience. They all have a background in playing these kind of strategic games and tactical plays, because they do come from this background. They've been playing FPS games for a pretty long time before Valorant even came into the picture. So I think that also gives them a little bit of a buff, so as to speak.
Okay, Zach, now we talked a little bit about their multi-roles and how they play. I want to talk a little bit about their compositions. Do you think that Bren Victress is one of the teams that have the most different or diverse compositions compared to the rest of the team? Or do you think they're a type of team that likes playing one single composition that they're very useful and comfortable in?
I think that they're one of the teams that actually show the most variance when it comes to composition on a lot of these maps. They're not afraid to pick up the Killjoy, for example, and swap over to the Chamber if they're feeling it. They like to run a double duelist sometimes on Haven, but other times it's just going to be the Raze. I believe Mikasi who picks it up. So a very dynamic team, and I think they base their team comps off of who they're playing against. I've noticed that as well. And one more thing that I think that they do really well is, depending on the team comp which they are running, they like to vary how they attack. And usually Bren, they're a team that after a little bit of like filling out the holes in the opponent's defense, they like to get really aggressive at attack, go for those really quick, strong attacks. But when they're playing against teams like SMG or Alter Ego, you've noticed them slow down the pace, really cause a little bit of concentration in their opponent's rank. So I think that they are, if not the most flexible team, they're definitely in that top 3 when it comes to team flexibility and agent roles.
Yeah, speaking of flexibility, we also have another team that's quite flexible. It's going to be SMG. And we know the SMG storyline has been very interesting when you think about it. They're a team that from Open 1 till Open 2 or 3, they're a team that just doesn't manage to clinch it, has a hard time closing games, and they struggled. But at the end of the day, they finally made it. And we're starting to see them starting to click together, trying to see a very, very strong sort of gameplay as well as chemistry between the team members. So let's dive in on that. What do you think about Team SMG, Zach?
I mean, I think it's a Kohibi and envious show if you just look at the stats, for lack of a better word. Yeah, just Kohibi go kill is their most successful strat, but that does not mean you have to underestimate them at all as a team. Like we've seen envious in particular on that jet clutch out 1v4s and overtimes to be able to help the team win the map. I think that they narrowly missed out on second place. I think they were just 2 points behind Bren and Victress in that APAC leaderboard to be able to qualify. I mean, there's no question about whether they're a contender or not, and they're very consistent. And like you mentioned, Tash, they are one of the teams that also likes to have a little bit of flexibility in their agent comps. You've seen them really switch between the initiators. They like going in for the breach and the sky. They like swapping it out for a double duelist sometimes. They go in for a Sova as well instead of that breach. So I think that they're a team that has also shown that they can be very dynamic, depending on the map as well as which half they're starting on. They do like to pick up that breach when they are on attack, and it shows because their attack win percentage on certain maps is just through the roof. Like I don't think I've seen a team with a higher win percentage on a map like Haven, for example.
Yeah, their Haven map plays is very scary, and I also get a bit scared whenever I see them running on Ascent. Speaking of that, there's also another thing I want to talk about, Envious. So we know Envious is one of the duelists, but we also have seen her kind of default onto controllers, especially on Omen. And when we see her play Omen, it's not your usual play with your team, give your cover, give the blinds, and move together. It's very aggressive, in your face, and you never really know where she's going to pop out. Let's talk a little bit about that kind of gameplay from Envious and how it impacts her team.
I mean, Envious, no matter what role you put her on, she basically does the job of a duelist. Like you mentioned, when you switch her over from that jet to the Omen on Ascent in particular, her timings are the most perfect I've ever seen. Like she's able to find those gaps in the defense, really able to just sneak in and you're fighting, you're trying to retake the A site, and then suddenly Envious just pops out behind you like boom. And there you go, 3K for her. We've seen it so many times, and it's amazing how even like the top teams, they're not able to quite adapt to that kind of play. Yet they managed to figure out at some duration during the match, perhaps they call a timeout. They're like, look, the Omen likes to lurk. Please have somebody watch out for it. But by that time, the damage is usually done. So
yeah. I mean, technically, it's called Paranoia on Omen for a reason, and then you put it onto Envious, it's like Paranoia times 5. So it's a very scary situation. But in those situations as well, I mean, there's also another thing that we always see from SMG is Kefrodite's clutch Phrodites. In a lot of situations, yes, clutches are so fun to watch, but in a lot of situations when it happens a lot, you start to question, why are we in so many of these clutch situations? Is it because of our misplays, or is it because they have a lot of misplays? Kefrodite has to come in and band-aid for them.
I mean, there are some rounds where it's misplay. You see perhaps Envious and Kohibi getting a little bit too aggressive. Some teams are ready for them. Right off the bat, you start off with a disadvantage. But Kara Friday, she's like that support player that you always want to have on your back. We've seen her on the Viper. We've seen her on the Killjoy. A lot of these attacking rounds, especially on maps like Icebox, for example, she's just like, yeah, you know what? You guys can go play aggressive. I've got the lineups. I've got the win conditions. You guys can go have fun. And I think you really do need a player like that to balance out the aggression that comes out from duelists like Kohibi, for example. She pops off and she gets 3K, 4K, whatever else that she gets so often, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And when that does happen, you want somebody a little bit more patient, measured, and that's exactly who Kara Ferrari is for the team. So I think that sometimes it's a misplay, but most of the time it's just her being that dependent player that SMG can really, count on when she's needed the most to be able to clutch out. And that enables the rest of the team to make more risky, aggressive plays, which often work out. More often than not, they do work out. So I think that's why.
Okay, last question for you. The map pick. So I think their performance, especially on Ascent, has been really good. Haven as well. But I want to talk about their brand new map pick, which was Fracture. And I think they have one of the most interesting ways of playing Fracture, which is very, very similar to teams such as Paper X. Very aggressive on the defense, likes to go for those pincers, those lurks. And I feel like out of all the teams we've seen here, VCT Game Changers, the way they play it is very dynamic, very diverse, and very aggressive.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you're running a double duelist comp, you are gonna be really aggressive. They do like to go for that jet as well as that raise combo. And like you mentioned, they play Fraction in a very high info, high aggression way. They like to get that initial pick, that initial information at the very least, and off the back of that, they make a call. Sometimes you see them stack up. Sometimes you see them not afraid to really push for and get those trades, especially when when they know that their opponents have some key ultimates on hand and they want to try and capitalize on that. And like you mentioned, their Fracture record is incredibly impressive. They've only lost to Alter Ego, and that was one time. They've beaten Alter Ego and Fracture before as well. So I think that's a map that other teams will definitely be looking to permaban or at least avoid playing with SMG against.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about open overtime, starting off with Team Orangutan. So Team Orangutan is a team that I think that started off at the bottom and now they're one of the teams at the top. They've had an incredible run with their team flying all the way off to Singapore to play together. And from 100 ping going to 2 ping must have been a big ping buff for them. And on top of that, they've had a big comeback, 1-11 comeback. What do you think about them?
Personally, I'm a huge fan. I know casters aren't supposed to have a bit of a bias, but whenever an orangutan match comes up, I just cheer for them from inside because I think that they're one of the teams that, apart from their impressive run, the fact that they managed to qualify for Elite, despite only partaking in 2 opens, they didn't have the circuit points, but they managed to rack up enough in 2 or 3 events to qualify for the overtime event, and right there, they were the first team to really qualify. So they have a very impressive track record, but more than that, a lot of the time when you look at the game changer teams, right? They have players from mostly just one region or maybe 2. You do see Singapore and Malaysian mixes coming in, but Orangutan, they have teams from I think 4 regions right now. They have Filipinos, they have Kachao and Japeeps are from there, I believe. They have Sway, who's from India. I think they signed Oreophilia, and she's from Thailand, if I'm not wrong. So they have players from multiple regions, and the fact that they were able to overcome not only like the language barrier, but also cultural and everything. The organization invested a lot in them as well. The fact that they were able to splurge for a boot camp, fly in all these players around the world, and really help and build that team dynamic up so that they can perform really well in these events. That's phenomenal from them, and it really shows because you see teams in the game changer scene who have been around for like the past year or 2, and Orangutan has achieved far more than any of them put together. And like you mentioned, they just don't know when to quit. When you're down 111, you'd think, okay, let's just go next match, GG, it's okay. But being able to come back and win 14-12, especially against a team like Extend Sapphire, who were one of the top 4 teams before the course of the tournament, they just nearly missed out on qualifying, and being able to snowball that momentum, dominate them, and win 3-0 in a grand final, that speaks volumes. And they recently got an even bigger buff because we were talking about how Alter Ego, they had a roster change. Well, the roster change is because their controller player Oreophilia is going to be joining Orangutan for this event, and she's going to be replacing Casper, I believe, for as their controller player. So that's definitely a huge buff coming in because while Oreo, she doesn't have the raw numbers that Ineri or Ayumi put up, she definitely has that stability. She's always there for the team, and I think that's going to be a huge buff coming up for Orangutan heading into this series.
Yeah, now that you mentioned Oreophilia, she's actually one of the best controller players I've seen so far. And to hear that she has left Alter Ego and joining Orangutan is such a big thing because it can really change the dynamic of how Orangutan plays. And we all know Orangutan is not necessarily the most aggressive team when it comes to how they play, but they're more calculative. So the way that adding another controller is like, you're already on 300 IQ. Why not add another 200? Like, give us 500 IQ. It's always so interesting. And on top of that, I feel like in their last run for open overtime, having Chloe in their team has been such a great thing for them in terms of morale, in terms of how they play. What do you think of her coming in so last minute?
I think it was personally great because she brings that stable sentinel player that they really needed. Like, they had Casper on the chamber before, but she was mostly a controller main. So having Chloe coming in, being able to pick up that Killjoy or Sage, which is what she mostly plays, role, and just fitting in perfectly, it's great because Chloe is a player with a lot of experience. She has that CS background, if I'm not wrong. She does more than that. She used to play for Enigma Galaxy, and that kind of competitive experience in Valorant, it really helps when you're joining a new team. And and she was able to bring in a lot of stability and structure, I think, that helped them perform better. And, being from Singapore herself and the boot camp in Singapore, she probably helped with a lot of cultural bonding as well. I've seen those pictures. They all look great.
Yeah, we love seeing their those videos when they finally get that that win where they're just so cute. Even though they're just brand new players, they're already so close with one another. And as you said, they have players all the way from Philippines, from Indonesia, from India, and from Singapore. And of course, you also have their coach Gunner. And let's talk a little bit about the coach here, because for Orangutan, they're definitely a team that really started from the bottom. Now we're at the top. Very, I would say, slow start for them. But it seems like every tournament they join, they learn and gain so much to the point they made it to the top. What do you think of their performance?
I think a lot of it can definitely be, it's credit that should be given to the players because they're constantly working to improve themselves. I have some of them on my list. So whenever I log into my game, it's always like custom scrim. Whenever I log in, they're playing a scrim, man. Like that kind of hard work, it's just insane. And like I mentioned, their coach as well. I remember seeing, I think it was Mythica before she left. She was posting about like aim training and stuff. And man, that is an onerous routine. So many death matches and and you have to like switch around weapons and stuff, and you have to play until you come first like twice, and all that kind of intense aim training, it really shows in game. Because I think if you are talking about a player in particular Mythica, like when she joined, her stats were good, but after like that last open that she was playing for the team, her stats were really insane, especially when you consider that she's on that controller player. So that shows not just for that player Mythica, which I know I'm talking about because she did post about the aim training, but this is consistent for all of the players. And really, like, it shows over the course of these last few months how much they've improved, how much they're able to really frag out as opposed to just being tactical. And that's one more thing that I like, because Orangutan, they're a team that you don't really rank high up in the aggressiveness part, but their defense, it's almost flawless half the time. Like that game against Exton, which we were talking about, right? 111.
11-1.
Yeah, that their defense was flawless. Like Chloe in particular on that Killjoy is terrifying. You think you're gonna be afraid of the neon on Sway? No, you need to watch out for Chloe, because that Killjoy, she is scary as hell.
Yeah, I mean, you never really know where she's gonna pop out. The way that she puts her lineups is just very interesting. Now, it's not just about the lineups, it's just where exactly is she gonna swing out
Exactly.
from. And her clutch plays have been really impressive. I'm really excited to see more from them. Especially, I would say that this is one of the teams with the most tenacity that I have seen in the whole tournament.
Definitely. And they're a team that's very humble, for lack of a better word. If you ask them, like, who's your biggest rival, who do you really want to beat, and they're, no, we just want to be the best for ourselves. We think everybody is the same, and we just want to play for ourselves and be the best that we can be. But I'm sure you know that you talk to Sway, right?
Yeah, of course. I've talked to her before. She's very excited that she's able to actually fly out, see her friends, and just play together. Their idea about playing together is more of just mental, I have to say, where they can actually play together and comfort each other. Because usually in a tournament side, we always see like timeouts mostly for those strategic calls, how they play. But for them, it's just timeout, console each other, make sure that they're in the right mindset. I think Orangutan has a great environment for the right kind of mental state that you should be during a tournament.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. And I think this particular elite, though, they are also a little bit of a dark horse, because like Alter Ego, right, they have a new player coming in, and we all love Casper. Casper's been insane, whether she's on that chamber, whether she's on that controller role. One of the strongest Astral players, I believe, over the course of Game Changers this year. But unfortunately, I think because of health issues, she's not going to be able to play in this elite event. So it's going to be Oreophilia who's filling in her shoes. I mean, of course, Casper has big shoes, but Oreo is definitely capable of filling them. It's just a question of whether they'll be able to get that team dynamic in place yet again, because this is a roster that's seen success over, I believe, the last 2 or 3 tournaments, and during overtime in particular. So yet again, the fact that they're making a roster change, especially since it only happened like a few weeks ago, that's going to lead to a little bit of concentration, for lack of a better word. But I think they'll do great nevertheless.
All right, so now that we're done with Orangutan, let's talk a little bit about another team that did pretty well during open overtime. Let's talk about Zol Meraki. Also another team that started at bottom, now we're at the top. One of the teams that I did not expect to actually make it out just because of their performance in their first tournament, and we saw huge improvement coming into open overtime. What are your thoughts?
I think they're a great team. They attribute their, success to being able to communicate and really play as a team. And I think that they are one of the teams that are really good at trading each other out and just being able to play in a very coordinated manner. So that's something that really goes in their favor. Their success is even more astonishing because of the fact that I think that only one of their players, who is Kamiyu, if I'm not wrong, they're the only player who really have any experience with FPS games before this. Everybody else started off with Valorant, and now they're here in the premier tournament for APAC, and that's just huge coming in. And it's one thing to be able to just be a cracked aimer and have experience from CS:GO and really translate it here, but it's another to start from scratch and work your way up. And I think that Zol Meraki, they're a team that's really managed to do that. It's huge.
Yeah, and on top of that, let's talk a little bit about their roster lineup. So they had Exakis before playing with them, now no longer with the team, and they already had a change in their roster. So Exakis, I did interview her before, and she said that only last year she was an Iron player, and this year she's already up there in Immortal. And I'm just like, how on earth? And she says that she is very, very active in asking her friends to bring her into customs, teach her the lineups, teach her how to play every single agent. Now, if you put that same mindset to every single player of Zol Meraki, it really shows that in terms of their improvement, not only is it hard work, but also how fast they're able to really learn in terms of their agent lineup and agent pickups. Also, on top of that, I just realized in all their lineups, all of their players are Filipino except for Lucidity, who is the only player from Malaysia. What do you think it's like for her in terms of their chemistry so far?
I mean, they did great over the course of the overtime event. Yeah, they did pretty great. It was a last-minute pickup, and Lucidity, well, I believe she played for Sovereign before, and a lot of the matches, for lack of a better word, she was the carry for the team. And the fact that she was able to really level up and join a team like Meraki, which already has an established history, is huge for her. And I think that a lot of their comms are in English, so it doesn't, at least communication-wise, it's not a huge issue for her. But I think it was just fitting into an already strong existing team dynamic and really being able to find value. And looking at their performance over overtime, I think she did a pretty great job there. So I don't see too many issues coming up from that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Lucidity, I felt like in Sovereign, one thing that really caught my eye about her are her aim jewels. She never misses. But then the question was for Sovereign, for me, when I was casting their game, was how are you going to be able to translate those aim jewels into another trade? How are you going to be able to get more value? Because it just felt for Sovereign, they weren't really getting the answers in terms of how their utility usage was. And coming into a team such as Zol Meraki, which I feel like they're not the most aggressive, but the utility usage has absolutely been on point, I think is the cherry on top for her. Because when you have teammates who are able to put down the utilities for you and set you up to win these aim jewels as well as get those pickoffs, I think that she will definitely shine.
That's definitely true. They are one of the premier teams when it comes to utility usage. But one more thing is that when Lucidity was playing for Sovereign, a lot of times you'd see her get the first pick, but on those rare occasions that she wasn't able to, they could never trade her out. It ended up being a 0-for-2 offer. So the teammate who was there to trade her, they went down too. But ever since she joined Zol, right, she's always had Capricious. And I mean, we've talked a lot about Capricious. Whenever I cast her matches, I go insane. And for a good reason, right? She's one of those scariest players, also not afraid to take aim duels. And I think that her and Lucidity are that duo that you really want to watch out for when you're playing against, because we talk about duos before. We talked about Koibi and Envious. We talked about Eneri and Ayumi, and I think that Capricious and Lucidity, they definitely have the potential to be up there. They just need to really establish their track record a little bit further, because they've only played in one tournament together so far. But I think that having that partner able to really take on those aim duels and be confident that you're going to be traded out, or even if you get only one frag, your teammate's going to be there to get more, that's something that really helps her along with that utility usage that you mentioned.
Yeah, and then let's talk a little bit about Piety. So Piety, if you look at her agent composition or agent picks, she's more of a controller player, but she's also able to play the initiator. So what do you think about her as well as Lucidity's picks, which are very, very, I would say, flexible? That's either going Sentinel or Initiator, or when you look at Lucidity, it's either playing a Sentinel, an Initiator, a Duelist, and you look at Nicole, who's either an Initiator or a Sentinel. These kind of role swaps that can happen at any time. Do you think it's considered an advantage, or could it be very detrimental for them?
I think it's honestly an advantage because when you have that kind of flexibility available, you're gonna keep your opponents guessing. So they're not sure, oh, is Paiti gonna pick up that Sova? Oh no, or is she gonna go in for a controller instead? Because Paiti Sova, especially on I think Icebox, it's a really really scary agent. But you prepare for that. You're gonna be thinking you're gonna be playing against lineups and stuff. But that last minute roll comes in, and different players play their agents. Very differently. So Paiti prefers to go in for a little bit more of that, let's say, docile play. She's that clutch player. She's that backup option when Capricious and Lucidity don't come through. But if you're going to be swapping out somebody instead on that role, it's going to, again, lead to a difference in how your team coordinates and plays. And that's going to make counter-stratting difficult. So I think that's definitely a bonus coming in. But, if they didn't have one particular player who played a single role, like for example, Eneri always picks up that duelist, right? It would be a bit more of an issue, but you have Capricious. She's not afraid to pick up that chamber and really like carry. And despite I think the nerfs coming in, I say nerfs with the code because he's still pretty overpowered in my book. I still think that she will be able to stand up and be that star duelist / chamber player. I know he's a sentinel, but I'm not gonna call him that because nobody plays him like a sentinel now. So I'm just gonna say she's gonna be that player that they really need to rack up those numbers, and she has lucidity as well, so I wouldn't count them out anytime.
Yeah, speaking of not counting out another team, let's talk a little bit about LFO, previously known as Nigma Galaxy, a team that we saw had a strong start over on VCT Game Changers, went quiet, and then suddenly came back in open overtime with a great opening statement match. What do you think about them?
Oh man, Nigma Galaxy, I definitely overtime. I did not expect them to make it through, I'll be very honest. After Orangutan beat X10, I was like, okay, they still have their lower bracket runners. They're probably going to be qualifying through that. But Nigma Galaxy, they were like, nope, Zach, you're wrong. Shush, we're going to be taking the last slot here. And I think they did a great job in being able to qualify. They're definitely one of the older teams that have been around. I think even last year they were able to qualify for the APAC Elite event, and they came top 5, I believe, if I'm not wrong. So it's not bad at all. And one of the most consistent rosters, so as to speak. They've barely had any changes when it comes to players, with the exception of just before this event Elite, it is going to be Aluka who is going to be joining Alter Ego instead of them. So I think that they'll have to deal with her loss, because both Aya and Aluka together, they were that really strong duo that were really able to power up some of these performances coming in from them. But now that they no longer have half of that equation, I don't know how they're going to really fill it in.
Yeah, speaking of the roster as well, I don't know if this was made aware to a lot. Trix, their coach, was actually playing in open overtime on the final day they were playing. And what's really interesting about this is the fact that they had to go into sub because some of the players were just not available on that day. Coming in to see Trix playing the Sage as well as the Killjoy and playing with the team as a coach and coming in as a sub as well, do you think that it kind of messes up their team chemistry, or do you think that she is actually the gel that keeps the team together?
I mean, I think she's definitely not somebody to mix up, because Trix was a player on their main roster over the course of the last year, so they definitely have experience playing with her already as a team. So I don't think there's any issue of her really disrupting the existing team chemistry so far. And the fact that she is the coach as well currently, or she was during that point of time, it really helps because she knows the strats from above. She knows how exactly she can fit in and really bring value to the team. So and of course, she is a very scary player as well. She might not be up there in the numbers, but she is very, very consistent, and she deserves a lot of credit for that. One more player when you're talking about roster changes for XNGX, or LFO as they're now known, is going to be Hannah. She was on Asteria for a little bit before this, for another team that qualified for APAC Elite last year. And now that she's joined LFO, I think she's doing a great job, as we saw during the course of overtime.
When you think about Nigma Galaxy or LFO right now, they had a really great statement match, but there was one match where they got 13-0. And this is the question. When you go 13-0, mentally, it's very hard for you to come back. It's a very devastating loss, especially during a tournament. But they still managed to make a great comeback on map number 2. So let's talk a little bit about their mental. What do you think about it, and how do you think they overcome that?
I think experience really plays into it. The fact that, they've been around, they've been playing together as a team for almost 2 years now. It really helps when you have that level of experience, and you know that there's another map ahead. It's not the end of the journey for us. That experience really helps with keeping their mental in shape. But more than that, I think that map that they got 13-0 on, it wasn't their map pick. So they were like, okay, you know what? This is over. It's fine. We've got map number 2. We give that one to them. 13 is all they get. We're gonna be finishing it off from here. And I think that kind of positive thinking really helps, especially when you consider that they have a coach slash player. So Trix, she has experience playing, she has experience coaching, she knows how to like really keep things positive for the team. And I think that having somebody like her on their team in whatever capacity, be it player, sub, coach, I think it's gonna make your team so much more stronger in the long run.
Okay, so another player I want to talk about is Aluka. So we saw before that she was a very strong duelist for the team, especially when it goes to Aya. Great duelist when she's using the Rays. Also, she's also used Reyna, which makes things very interesting. Now that Aluka is out of the picture, how do you think the team will be performing?
Honestly, I am very worried for them, for lack of a better word, because like you mentioned, she was one of the strongest duelists, half of a power couple, so as to speak. It was Aya and Aluka who were really putting up the numbers for Enigma Galaxy. And, while Gwen and Hannah, they're definitely players who have a lot of potential, I don't know if they have the same kind of aggressive firepower that Aya and Aluka were able to bring to the team. So they're going to have to compensate in other ways. And we saw a little bit of that during the course of, I think it was overtime, if I'm not wrong. So they were able to really build upon a lot of good utility usage. The other players on the team, they were able to like buy time, counterplay, and do a lot of stratting. So I think they've evolved into more of a tactical team as opposed to the, firepower based start that they had. And that's actually a good thing because, you can't always win all your gunfights. You can't depend on your duels to do that fragging.
Yeah, so speaking about that, I'm really excited to see more from them because it's going to be a whole new strat, lineup, and play. And I think we may just be seeing more of Trix on their main lineup. So let's look out for that on Elite. But now, let's talk a little bit about X10 Sapphire. There's a lot of pressure on their shoulders. Ever since Open 1, they were one of the favorites to make it out early, didn't quite clinch it, came back for number 2, and then open overtime, and finally during last chance qualifiers when they finally made it. So now, in your opinion, X10 Sapphire, what do you think has been the clincher for them for the LCQ?
I think during the LCQ, they had a really clean run. I don't think they dropped a single map over the course of their run. They just steamrolled everybody else, for lack of a better word. I think the most competitive score that they had to deal with was like a 13-7 or a 13-8. So I think I actually got to cast some of their matches, and it was just a delete, for lack of a better word. Especially when Muffin picked up that Neon as well as that Raze, both those duelists, she was just able to put up the most incredible numbers. But more than Muffin really stepping up, I think that the rest of the team, they realized that it was their last chance, so as to speak, and they had to do their best as well. Polly in particular, over the course of a lot of these maps, especially that final, she was able to perform really, really well on the controller role. A lot of phenomenal utility usage coming in. We saw her pick up that Astra, we saw her pick up that Brimstone, so I think she was one of the players that definitely helped the team to qualify, and in the fashion that they did manage to qualify. I think they're a team that in the past they've depended a lot on both Muffin as well as Baby TZ to really pop off and be able to get a lot of routes, but they've started to coordinate more as a team. Alyssa, she's really phenomenal on that flex role as well. We've seen her pick up the Sage. She fills in as a controller as well if they want to go in for a double controller lineup or something. She goes for the Sky as well. So a very, very flexible player. She's evolved a lot, and both Alyssa and Ginny, I think in particular, they've really been working on their aim.
Oh yeah, Alyssa and Ginny is definitely those two players I really want to talk about as well, especially in terms of Ginny as the IGL. She's been in the scene for so long when you think about it. I think I first saw her back in 2016 during her previous game when she was the captain for another team, which was Myth. Now that she is in X10 Sapphire, I don't think that it's going to be going away. She's always been a player that is just really great leadership. And coming into the game, you see her playing Morph Initiator, especially on the KO. But in Open 1 and 2, we did see a disconnect between Ginny, Alyssa, as well as Muffin in terms of their coordination. Do you think that coordination is still lacking during LCQ, or do you think that has already been figured out?
I mean, they definitely figured it out over the course of the LCQ, but I mean, you do need to consider that it is the LCQ, and all of their teams that were their major competition over the course of like Open 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them have already qualified. They're not going to be playing against any of these. They didn't face down Alter Ego or SMG or Bren to qualify here, which were the teams that beat Xset out to be able to make it directly to Elite from circuit points. So they haven't played against any of these teams in a competitive space yet. So I can't say if they've completely managed to eradicate those problems, but if it's any indication of how they managed to coordinate during LCQ, they've definitely done a great job of improving, because when you consider their journey, right, they were on track to qualify through circuit points. They missed out just because of the fact that they went out during the group stage. They couldn't make it through groups to be able to make it to the playoffs for Open 4. They lost out on a lot of points because of that, and that's the reason why they had to go through overtime and then LCQ. And perhaps during overtime, they were still reeling from that loss. They couldn't believe that they didn't make it in their first try, and that's the reason why their performance wasn't that great. They had a mental issue after that first map loss to Orangutan. They just couldn't really toughen it out, and that tournament just went down for them. But they came back swinging for LCQ, and I think that they've definitely worked on a lot of things, whether it's individual aim, whether it's coordination as a team, especially Alyssa and Ginny. They play together so much right now as a team. You see them really using their initiator utility to enable Muffin to go super aggressive, extend herself even further. And I think that if they can manage to pull off those kind of plays against the top teams who are already in Elite, that will definitely be the sign that tells whether they can win it or not.
When you look at X10 Sapphire, do you think that the teams that you mentioned prior are their biggest competitions, or do you think that it's their mental state that is the blocker for them?
I think it's a mix of both, definitely. They have a very big history of winning and losing against these teams. They are the only team to have beaten Alter Ego Celeste in a Game Changers event till date, kicking them down to the lower bracket. So that's something that they definitely do have going for them.
It's very ironic, isn't it?
I know, yeah, it really is. Like, when you consider that they were one of the last teams to qualify, the fact that they're able to kick down the number one team, so they have the potential to be able to pull off wins like this, but they need to keep their mental in a state for that. Because, before Orangutan's match against them, all the stats were in their favor to qualify. But after that first map loss, they just weren't able to pick themselves back up. So I think that mental is definitely going to be huge coming in. They need to be able to lose with grace. That's something that we've seen from other teams. Like we talked about, right? Mental, it's really important. Orangutan has it in spades. I think that Zol has it as well. But X10, they've had a very up and down history, so I think that's going to be an issue. And of course, you can never really underestimate any of these teams, especially those top three. You always have to be on your toes. You always have to be prepared for what they're going to be bringing in against you. And the fact that there aren't going to be any new VODs available for these three teams that X10, they have a very up and down history with. But X10, all of their recent matches, their map picks, what they favor, their team comps, it's all going to be in the open, because they came through LCQ. So any team that comes through the LCQ, they are at that inherent disadvantage of having their most current strats or team compositions really being out there for everyone to capitalize on. So I think that that's something that they will have to figure out heading into this event.
All right, so now talking about figuring out, let's talk about the best rebrand I've seen here in the tournament from L Streak, which is a losing streak esports, to W Streak. The rebrand has been really, really telling from them, because W gave them a W to bring them here to Elite. So now, W Streak Esports is one of those teams where during the previous tournament, the open overtime, they didn't really catch my eye up until LCQ. Let's talk about that.
I mean, for me, I think even during the course of that overtime event, it was very, very close, because they had to play against Nigma Galaxy for that last spot, if I'm not wrong, and it was a really close best of 5. It went to all 5 maps, and I think 2 of those maps went into overtime as well. So they caught my eye right then, back when there was still L Streak. They did a great job of really almost qualifying. NGX just were able to find the strength for that last map and win it 3-2. But heading into this LCQ event, they were definitely one of the teams that I really thought had a good chance of qualifying, because they have that mix of, of course they have the rebranding buff, as you like to call it, the W Streak buff. But more than that, they also have a really experienced bunch of core players like Noxy and Nuki, for example. Both of these players, they're from the old Aresta team, which again, Aresta as a team, they've performed a little bit so and so, for lack of a better phrase, but they definitely had their players that stood up. And whatever matches that they did win, it was off the back of Nuki like really fragging out on that arena. So having experienced players like those join in this team, all of the players from W Streak, in fact, number one, they're from Thailand, so they have that that commonality, that same language, the same region. They're able to boot camp and stuff easily. And number two is the fact that they're really able to capitalize on the experience they've had with the previous teams, and they're not afraid to innovate. Like I mentioned, right? Nuki, for example, she always picked up that Reina when she was playing for Aresta, but ever since she started playing for W Streaks, she's been adapting roles. She's been taking up that initiator sometimes. She's not afraid to pick up that chamber, that duelist when necessary. So I think that kind of hard work and adaptation, it really shows, and one of the major reasons why they qualified in such a stunning manner through the LCQ.
I think it's also worth to say that when you look at Mimi as well, I think in most matches she is going to be their default chamber player, and how she plays chamber has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of taking care of flanks and just playing a very aggressive chamber. I think the way she plays chamber is just not afraid to take up space. I really love seeing teams playing very, very high risk early, pushing up, getting a pick, teleporting away. And it's rare to see that kind of chamber play, because usually when we see chamber, they're all the way in the backside going for those long range hits. Now, let's talk a little bit about their lineups here when you look at them. I mean, if you talk about Nuki as well as Noxy, I would say that they are definitely the NN, double N, notorious Noxy Nuki duo, right? But we also want to talk about Dolph, because she's a very interesting, I would say, player in terms of her duelist. Because Dolph, when we see her on Jet, never missing heads. She will pop off, but at the same time, you can put her on Sova and she does the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's something, like I mentioned, is really going in W Streak's favor here. Their players, they all have that experience, but they used to play like a very pigeonholed role, and they've not been afraid to adapt their team comps. They've like been working really hard on them, and they're that flexibility, it really helps them be able to like switch roles really quick. And I think all of their players as well. You know, we talk about how Nuki or Noxy are the particular top frags for a match, but I think that all of their players have shown in different kinds of series against different teams that they are able to show up when the team needs them the most, and I think that's something that definitely goes in their favor, despite of how new a roster they are, right? I think that they formed just for overtime, if I'm not wrong. They formed just before that. They're a new team. They come on board. They immediately they do a great job, and in LCQ they finally qualify. So being able to qualify in just a few months, that's huge coming up from a team like that.
It is huge, and you know what else is huge? They have a 6-girl lineup here, and it's very interesting how they play their lineups. Like certain matches, they'll have maybe Rosie come in, especially for Fracture. You see her play that with her Brimstone, and then on other maps you see maybe Cupcake come in, maybe you'll see Yuki come in. So what do you think of this lineup? It's very similar to what we see from Team Secret over on VCT APAC.
Yeah, it is. And closer to home, it's also pretty similar to what you see from Bren Victress. They are not afraid to really run that 6-woman lineup. And I think it just brings you an additional bit of adaptability. Like, for example, if you're playing against Cupcake, you know that she's going to be, someone to watch out for. You're going to have to check every angle. You're going to have to be really careful about how you play around her. Because if you give her an inch, she will take a mile. And she's not afraid to do that. She's shown in a couple of matches before. And again, each player has a unique kind of playstyle. And you don't know who you're going to be facing in the next match you head into. I mean, sure, if it's Fracture, you can predict that it's going to be, like you mentioned, this player stepping in instead of the other, but they're not afraid to really switch it up, and that's something that they managed to capitalize on a lot in their matchups. Like, for example, their series against Nigma Galaxy, the reason why it got so close was because they weren't afraid to really swap things around, swap roles, and push. They're another team that has a really strong mental, and they've shown that despite heading into multiple overtimes, losing in those overtimes, losing like 18-16, 16-14, they're still able to head into the next map with a smile and really able to win it. So that's something that's a testament to how hard they work and how resilient they are.
All right, so now that we've covered every single player here in the VCT Game Changers APAC series heading into Elite. So we've seen all of them play, we've seen them how they play, and some teams obviously have the advantage of not playing for the duration of the year until Elite happens. And we already know what happens when you are playing toward LCQ is that your strats are out there, people have seen you play, there's more VODs to work with, but there's also changes coming in from different agents. We also have newer agents coming in as well. As you remember as well, there was the addition of Fade coming through. So not all teams have actually showcased how they play with the new agent. And of course, Pearl is coming in as well. So in your opinion, out of all of these teams, which team will be the most likely to choose Pearl coming into Elite?
I think that we might actually see that coming in from Bren because they're a team that has a lot of flexibility. They're very adaptable. So I think that Bren Victress, as well as I wouldn't put it past Alter Ego either to pick it up because, again, you're number one for a reason. You have the most practice. They've had 4 months to just, all three of the teams, in fact, SMG, Bren, as well as Alter Ego, they've had like about 3 or 4 months to just sit around, plan for strats, play around the new agent, play around with the new map in the last 2 months. So I think that they are the top 3 teams, but mostly Bren because of how adaptable they are to really pick up Pearl, in my opinion, and see how they play it.
Yeah, personally, I think SMG would be most likely to pick up Pearl just because of how similarly it can play, especially when you look at Fracture. Now, let's talk a little bit about predictions. I'm really excited. Okay, so in your opinion, other than Alter Ego, I think we have a lot of expectations for them, but I think it can be a little bit shaky now, especially with the roster change. Which team do you think will most likely make it all the way to a champion? But toward your team going to champion, which team will give them the biggest threat?
I think I would have to say that apart from Alter Ego, because, all of us have this innate expectation that Alter Ego, they're going to have another perfect year heading in. But if you are going to calculate and probably account for the fact of their roster changes, the fact that they haven't been playing competitively against any of these teams for the last few months, I think that Orangutan is definitely a contender in my book. That's a team that I would like to see win apart from anybody else. If I had to bet, I would bet on either Orangutan or Bren Victress. Orangutan because they've proven that they're extremely flexible. They have Oreophilia coming up, so Oreophilia knows how Alter Ego has been playing for all these months. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of insider info that can really help them finally take them down. I mean, they were able to take Alter Ego to overtime without the help of Oreophilia. Now that they have that additional buff coming in, they're definitely a team to watch out for. But something else that really speaks volumes is consistency. And Bren, their team, they used to be called TC Arise. They made it to Elite last year. They did fairly well. This year around, they've been qualifying second during opens. They're the team with the second number of most circuit points. They're one of the most consistent teams out there. And I think that if they can really capitalize on all the roster change pandemonium that's going around, really figure out how exactly to beat their arch enemy, which they've done, like I mentioned, in a tournament that I was actually casting. So I think that they definitely have what it takes to beat out the top contenders. The question is, can they do it for this event? And if I had to bet, I would bet on these two teams. But what about you, Tash?
Personally, for me, I think it's going to be SMG that I'll put my money on, just because they have really worked really hard to find that clincher, and I don't think they want to let go of that. Just seeing them overcome all those hardships that they went through all the way in stage 1 and stage 2, I'm really kind of going toward them, especially as Pearl comes in. I wouldn't be surprised if they would be the team to pick up Pearl and Fracture if they can for deciders, because just of how the map plays. But for me as well, I really want to keep my eye on W Streak just because of that that rebrand buff. I feel like they're definitely the underdogs when it comes to all the other teams here, when you think in terms of experience as well as how long they've played together. So W Streak may just surprise us. I'm not very sure if they would make it all the way up to grand finals, but I feel like all the teams meeting them will definitely be surprised and just be like, okay, we were not expecting this sort of challenge to come out from them.
I think that's the case. And now that you talk about SMG, right, I think they also had a roster change, so as to speak. Nobody's leaving the team, but they do have Ratatouille, I believe, who is going to be joining them from Thursday.
Oh yeah,
and like Lucidity, right, those two are the players that you really want to have on your team. So the fact that a player like that is going to be with SMG for this tournament, I think that definitely does add weight to your argument that they could be the team to likely win it all.
Okay guys, we've wrapped up all the teams and we are now gonna wrap up the show. Guys, mark 1st October on your calendars because that is when Elite will be happening. I hope to see you guys there because you know that Zach and I are gonna be there too. Speaking of Zach, thank you so much for spending time and helping me break down the teams and giving an idea to the audience what to expect. Anyways, don't forget, again, 1st October on your calendars. I'm Tashbunny alongside Zach and we'll see you guys at Elite.